Hello again, third grade, and welcome to lesson 5. This lesson is titled How Have Heroes Helped Communities? In this lesson, you'll use your investigative skills to learn about real people who helped make their communities and the world better. Reading and talking about heroes will help you understand how people have solved problems. Here we have a picture of Anne Hutchinson as she's defending her actions during a trial in the colony of Massachusetts. So we'll read more about her in just a moment. Read text all the way through, circle words that you don't know, underline clues that tell you who Anne Hutchinson was, highlight clues that tell you where she lived, discuss with a partner why Anne Hutchinson was on trial, reread the quote from Anne Hutchinson, how does this show her beliefs, and then underline words and sentences from the text that show how Anne stood up for her beliefs. Let's go ahead and get started with our reading. Anne Hutchinson, a hero for freedom. Anne Hutchinson was born in England. Her father taught her to think for herself and to speak her mind. Anne sailed from Massachusetts with her family in 1634. They settled in Boston. Anne was very religious. She began to have meetings in her home. At the meetings, she talked about religion. She believed God taught everyone, not just ministers and men. Her ideas were different from what other people in her community taught and believed. The ministers who disagreed with Anne had her arrested. She was put on trial. During her trial, Anne Hutchinson stood by what she believed. She said only God could be her judge. The court ordered Anne to leave the community. She left, but she never gave up her ideas or her right to think for herself. Primary source in their words, Anne Hutchinson. Now, if you do condemn me for speaking what's in my conscience, I know to be truth. I must commit myself unto the Lord. Here we have an illustration of the court ordering Anne Hutchinson to leave Boston. Now let's go ahead and take a look at our next page. Again, we're talking about causes and effects. So the cause here is that Anne Hutchinson's ideas were different from the minister's ideas. The effect was that Anne was arrested and she was put on trial and asked to leave her community. So what we're going to do in our textbook is we're going to read and we're going to find various causes and effects as we go through. So we have 7 causes that we need to find and 7 effects that are related to them. You can use any of the ones that we come across in the text. I'll help you guys find some of them. If you want to use different ones, that's also okay. What is a hero? Heroes are people who make the world better for other people. They may be people who have done great things or behaved with great honor. They may be young or old, boys or girls. They may be famous people or everyday people. Teachers, firefighters, police officers, nurses, and others in your community are heroes. A hero could simply be someone who helps you feel better if you are having a bad day. Think about some of your everyday heroes. History is filled with heroes, women and men who fought for freedoms that we enjoy every day. They fought for freedom of speech, the right to vote, the right to attend school. They fought so all Americans would have equality or equal rights. In this lesson, you will read about some of our nation's heroes. Many of them risked their lives to change communities. They also changed our nation and the world. The stories of their lives will help you understand how people can solve problems and create positive change. Here we have a picture of Thomas Jefferson, and here we have a picture of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. American heroes. Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin are heroes who helped create our country. They worked together with others to write the Declaration of Independence. This document is dated July 4th, 1776. It lists the reasons why Americans wanted to be free from Great Britain. Jefferson was a skilled writer who wrote most of the document. Benjamin Franklin was also important because of the work he did to form our government. Franklin was a member of the Constitutional Convention. He and other leaders organized the government of the new nation. Franklin asked Congress to end slavery in our new nation, but Congress refused. It took more than 70 years for another American hero named Abraham Lincoln to bring an end to slavery in the United States. On January 1st, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. This was an executive order that freed our country's enslaved people. Lincoln spoke out against slavery and worked to end it. So in our first box in our graphic organizer, we can go back and say Americans wanted freedom, and the effect was that they wrote the Declaration of Independence. Let's continue reading. In their words, Abraham Lincoln. I do order and declare that all persons held as slaves within these designated states and parts of states are henceforward shall be free. And the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authorities thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of said persons. Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass also worked to end slavery. Both were born into slavery. They were able to escape and then work to free others. Tubman risked her life leading enslaved people to freedom. The routes she followed and the houses where people could hide were known as the Underground Railroad. Tubman helped many people to freedom. Frederick Douglass taught himself to read and write. He started a newspaper to speak out against slavery. He gave speeches to tell how he suffered in slavery. Even after slavery became illegal, African Americans were not given the same rights as other people. Douglass continued to work for equality for all people. So in your second box in your graphic organizer for your cause, you can talk about how Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass wanted to help enslaved people. The effect was that Harriet Tubman helped people to freedom using the Underground Railroad, and Douglass spoke out against slavery by starting a newspaper and giving speeches to let people know what slavery was like. As you've read, African Americans were not treated equally even after slavery ended. It took another 100 years and the work of heroes such as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to bring equality to African Americans. Dr. King was an African American minister. He spoke out against segregation. This is the separation of people by the color of their skin. Dr. King asked government leaders to end this separation. He led peaceful protest marches. He refused to use violence to meet his goals. Dr. King was killed in 1968 while working for civil rights. The country celebrates his birthday each January. Many other American heroes risked their lives to bring equality to people. Before 1920, women in the United States were not allowed to vote. Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony worked together to change that. They worked to bring equal rights to all women. Dennis Banks is another American hero. He helped found the American Indian Movement. The goal of this organization was to bring civil rights to Native Americans. Banks fought for fair and equal treatment of Native Americans. So in our third graphic organizer box, our third cause, we can say that African Americans were not treated equally under segregation. An effect was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. led peaceful protests to end different segregation laws. Around the world, humanitarian heroes around the world. Some heroes work to make the world a better place and a safer place to live. These people are called humanitarian heroes. Clara Barton was one of these heroes. She helped get medicine and supplies to soldiers who were sick and hurt during the Civil War. She earned the nickname Angel of the Battlefield. When a war started in Europe, Barton helped provide supplies for people there. Barton also convinced people in the government to sign the Geneva Conventions. This is an agreement on how to treat sick and wounded soldiers. In 1881, she started the organization that is now known as the American Red Cross. The American Red Cross and other national groups are now part of an international group. It is called the International Red Cross and Red Crescent Movement. This group was the idea of Henry Dunant. He was a humanitarian hero from Switzerland. The International Red Cross and Red Crescent Movement helped people around the world during war and natural disasters. The organization brings food, medical supplies, sets up places for people to stay, and help them find loved ones who are missing. So another thing we can put into our graphic organizer is the women that we talked about here, that women were not allowed to vote before the year 1920. And Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony worked hard to get women equality. Now, for our fifth box, we can talk about Clara Barton here. Clara Barton uh, was concerned for the sick and wounded people in war, and Henry Dunant was concerned for the sick and wounded as well. So in the effect box, we can put that Barton formed the American Red Cross and Dunant helped form the Red Cross and Red Crescent. Let's go on and continue reading. So we finished through 5 causes and effects so far. We have 2 more of each. Next, we're going to read about Eleanor Roosevelt. Eleanor Roosevelt was born in New York in 1884. In 1905, she married Franklin D. Roosevelt. Her husband began working in politics. She helped him with his work. Franklin Roosevelt became governor of New York in 1929. He was elected president in 1932. Eleanor Roosevelt changed the role of First Lady. She often traveled around the country for President Roosevelt. This was because Franklin had a disease called polio. This made it hard for him to walk and travel. When she returned from her trips, she told the president what she had seen. She also wrote a newspaper column and spoke at meetings. As First Lady, Mrs. Roosevelt worked for the rights of women, African Americans, and other groups. Roosevelt continued to work for Americans even after she was no longer the First Lady. She worked at the United Nations. There she helped write the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This document lists basic rights that all people should have. It says that all people have the right to life, liberty, and security. Many of these rights listed in the document are also found in the United States Bill of Rights. Eleanor Roosevelt spent her life helping others. The work she did helped to bring equality to many people. In their words, Eleanor Roosevelt, it is not a treaty. It is not an international agreement. It is not and does not purport to be a statement of law or of legal obligation. It is a declaration of basic principles of human rights and freedoms to be stamped with the approval of the General Assembly by formal vote of its members and to serve as a common standard of achievement for all people in all nations. Heroes make changes in their communities. Heroes are found everywhere. Some heroes fought for equality in education. Before the 1950s, African American students and white students in many states were not allowed to go to school together. They were segregated or legally separated. Linda Brown lived in Topeka, Kansas. She had to attend school a mile from her home, even though there was one much closer. The school near her home was for white children only. She was not allowed to go there. She had to attend a school for African American students. In 1954, the United States Supreme Court heard her case. The case was called Brown versus Board of Education. Before Brown versus Board of Education, Sylvia Mendez's family fought against school segregation in California. In 1943, students of Mexican descent were not allowed to go to school with white students. Her case, Mendez versus Westminster, ended segregation in California schools. The case was argued by Thurgood Marshall, the same lawyer who argued Linda Brown's case in Brown versus Board of Education. In Brown versus Board of Education, the Supreme Court ruled that education, separate, can never be equal. It ended the legal segregation of schools. Linda Brown's court case changed segregation laws. As an adult, Linda Brown continued to speak out against segregation. Not all heroes become famous. Heroes are people who take action when they see a problem in their communities. They may clean trash from the sides of the roads or the local park. Some heroes visit the elderly and help them with chores. Other heroes plant new seeds on hillsides after a large fire. All of these people do what they can to make their communities a better place to live. Sometimes only a few people know what they've done, but they're still heroes. Okay, so we can add more to our graphic organizers. Now we can add in about Eleanor Roosevelt, that she wanted equality for all people and that she wrote the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We can also talk about these two ladies, about Sylvia Mendez and about Linda Brown wanting equal education and to end segregation in schools. As a result, segregation was ended in California in the Mendez versus Westminster case, and then in 1954, the Supreme Court heard the Brown versus Board of Education case that also helped to get rid of segregation in schools. All right, once you've completed these sections, we're going to go ahead and jump back. So now we have information for our entire graphic organizer. There's a lot of things to pick from in your text that you can use to fill those spaces. Now, in the Write About It section, cause and effect, choose one of the issues in the past that caused people to take action. What was the issue? How did people work to solve the issue? What were the effects of their actions? So please answer each one of these parts very carefully and very thoroughly. Add lots of detail to each answer. And please make sure you're using complete sentences in everything you write. Then in the Connect to the Essential question area, under where it says pull it together, in what ways can people work together to solve problems in a community? So list a couple of ways and give details. Explain why those things are helpful and how they could be used to solve problems. That's it for this lesson. If you guys have any other questions, please let me know. Otherwise, have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.